Hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Alyssa and I try not to buy all the new makeup out there that I see and think is pretty. So I have to come up with ways to distract myself or convince myself that it's not needed. So today I am duping a palette that seemed pretty on first glance, and instead of trying to buy it, let me see what I can do with my makeup. If that sounds interesting, then please keep watching. So, the palette I'm talking about is from Cosmic Beauty. It's called The Lovers. I've heard lots of good things about the brand, but there's already some downsides for me. One, I have to pay for shipping, and it's not super cheap shipping because it's coming from across the ocean to get to me. Another reason is not the ideal product. The pans are not magnetic, and I have found that there really isn't a perfect palette for me that's out there. I mean, maybe if I did a collab, would it be my perfect? I don't know, because my moods change all the time, and what I would consider my favorite would not always be my favorite, I think. I feel like I would get bored with something eventually. So yeah, I like to be able to change things around. The price point is pretty good, but if there are shades that I know I'm not going to use, then I don't want to have to lug some big palette around just to get out, the certain shades I like, and then know that I'm kind of wasting other stuff. And then finally, when I was looking at it, there are certain colors that are always going to stand out more than others. You have your favorite colors to wear. So if they are favorites, do you maybe already have those colors? And if there are some that look appealing, how many is it? Because maybe I could just go and buy those certain shadows at some point. And it might cost more than buying the palette because I didn't even look to see how much it was, but it's not about the price all the time that matters to me. It's about, how much makeup I have and using it up and, not just buying everything that's out there, because I think a lot of makeup is beautiful. So what I have right here is what I came up with based on the swatches I saw, but I will say that I've seen different swatches, and of course on different skin tones it's going to look different. So, this might not match it perfectly. It's also not going to be perfect just because I'm using what I have, and it might be good enough because, certain shades that are similar, when you put them on the eyes, they're going to come off the same. So it doesn't matter if they're, one is slightly warmer or cooler or things like that. So this, if I'm trying to copy how they had it, and I'm going to have editing me just cut out this mirror part or cover it up with their palette so that it's not bothering you. But yeah, it's very different from how they did the swatches. I kind of tried to put them in the best I could because I actually picked the shades based off of the swatches first and then tried to put them in the palette the way they had it. And I was a little confused because I was thinking, like, for instance, this orange shade would have been the one that was here, but because it just, I don't know, the way they swatched was not how they looked, I felt like, in their pans. So like I said, I'm just trying to match the swatches, and even if it doesn't look the best here, I will have up my swatches so you can see. But when I'm looking through, the ones that were definitely the most far off for the color were the shifty shades, just because I don't necessarily have those exact shifts. So one of them was this bright pink to a purple is how it was looking. So if that's the case, this is not a shifty shade. It's a bright pink. Now, could I mix it with one of like this shadow, for instance, and get a little bit of that? I think I could. I might try to play around with that just to see. Another thing that I did differently was this shadow in their palette was a shimmer, I guess, but maybe almost satiny. It wasn't, I don't know, maybe a little bit metallic, but my thinking was this matched the color, and if I wanted something that was more sparkly, I could always top it with one of these sparkly shadows. you know, I have things that are similar in color that are that same formula where it's like kind of shimmery, kind of metallic, something like that. But they weren't the exact same kind of color. And so I decided to go more with the matte, knowing I have those other shades too that I could use, or like I said, topping it with something sparkly. And then this shifty shade was actually pretty close. I don't have the silvery grayish blue kind of color they had. The closest I have is this blue shimmer, which to me is really pretty. And I don't think I would like the color they had. I don't feel like I would use that one as often, so I'm okay not having that. This one was also not quite the same shift that they had, but I've had the pink gold types of shifts before, and they're fine, but I don't find myself using them as often as, you know, like this type of shade. So this is still it looks purple, but you'll see in the swatch, it is sort of still like a pinky with a little bit of gold to it as well. So that's where I was going with that. My beige shade might not be quite the same kind of beige that they had, but I have beige shades, so not a big deal. And yeah, I think otherwise I was happy with how everything else was swatching and how it looked. So let me just talk about where all the shadows are from if you're curious. So you'll notice I have actually quite a few from the Simply Posh Cosmetics Fairy Tale Fairies palette. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then Sydney Grace, I have 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes. Then I have from the Dots brand, they have the C'est La Vie palette, which is 1, 2, 3. This is also from the Dots, but it's just one of the singles that they have. This shadow is from JD Glow. And then Simply Posh Cosmetics Citrus Punch palette is this shade. This is from Cleona. Then from Colored Rain, this is from the Juicy Boost palette. And 1, 2, 3 are from their Vivid Pigments palette. All right, and that's everything there. So knowing that a lot of them came from palettes that I have, I will say I was thinking about, so both the Fairy Tale Fairies palette and combining that with my Dollhouse palette, they actually would cover, like the Dollhouse palette would have kind of handled some of these shades, you know, without, you know, if I didn't want to do singles, if I just wanted to get that same kind of look with pulling out my palettes, then I could probably pull out the Fairy Tale Fairies and the Dollhouse palette. And yeah, I would definitely have like the orange. I would have these. I don't have the blues. The greens are a little different because they're more of an olivey green. But otherwise, you know, and I guess like the bright pops of purpley pink type of thing, like, you know, are not in there. But I could use the Fairy Tale Fairies to get something similar. And so yeah, for me, you know, after seeing that, it's like, well, I have these colors apparently already. And so yeah, maybe if I wanted to get that one shifty shade that I'm using this for, okay, maybe it would cost like $10. Okay. And if I get it from a brand that maybe I want to buy another single from, even if I only bought that single, it would probably still be less than what the Cosmic Beauty palette is. And I'm only bringing in one eyeshadow that's like a really special eyeshadow. So, you know, and then when I look at the green section and blue, that's half the palette. And that's not stuff that I often wear. You know, I'm much more interested in wearing these kinds of colors. But I will try to get some looks and play with this and do this because it will get me to use these shades. And I like doing these duping palettes because it allows me to be inspired by what other people have come up with for color stories and then think about how I would use them. Because that's the one thing I miss from palettes is when they have sort of a random-ish color story, like there's actually a mix of colors, they're not just monochromatic, then it's, oh, like what were they intending? You know, how do they want me to mix these colors together? you know, what kinds of things could I come up with? What kinds of looks? So I like, you know, so sometimes I want to buy an eyeshadow palette because I wish that I would have that inspiration. I feel like there were a lot more palettes back when I was first buying them that were a little bit more erratic in their color stories, which was fun. So I'm thinking of, I have the Saint and Sinner palette, I have my Weekend Festival palette, just things like that where there would be, you know, different colors. They didn't always have a matte shadow that made sense with the shimmer, you know, and things like that. But then it meant that you were kind of mixing things up a bit. A lot of the Juvia's Place palettes had a little bit more of a mix of colors versus, you know, these fully complete color stories where it's, oh, here we have green and we're going to put it with some brown. And then we can take some blue and we could put it with gray. Or we have red that we can put with pink. It's like, well, those are all things that I would be able to come up with myself that go together. So something like this where the colors are a little bit more jumbled, it takes me back to how it was. Now, this isn't super jumbled because, again, like I said, they did very much the blues and greens and the purpley pink type of stuff. So I'm going to see if I can kind of go across the color stories and mix them up a bit. I actually really liked how the look turned out. Like I said, I was going to try to be a little bit creative and not just stick with the warm side or the cool side of the palette, but, you know, mix it up. So, you know, I did end up using quite a few shades, I guess, because I used, well, I started with the blue in the crease. I also added some of this green and this green. I used this pink and this pink in the crease as well. I started putting this on the lid, but I forgot the shade's pretty chunky and just, it has some hard pan, and I kind of need to maybe, I don't know, maybe fix it up a little bit, or just, like I said, maybe I do need to get a new shade for that at some point, you know, because it is something I like and it's not the best version it could be. So I kind of stopped, and then I went and started using this shimmer instead. So that's what's mostly on the outer corner. And then I brought it also into the inner part as well, and then topped it more with that pink and kind of did that. The inner corner, I used this blue, and then I ended up putting a little bit of Good God with it as well. I, on the lower lash line, used this kind of almost teal-ish kind of shade. And then I ended up blending, you know, just sort of softening the edge of it with this, and then went around with that as well. And yeah, that was how I made the look, which, like I said, I am really happy with how it looks. I actually kind of, I mean, I complain about being chunky, but part of the chunkiness kind of makes it pop when you're looking from further away with like the sparkles. So I do like that. But yeah, so I'll show you this way too. And maybe I'll do some pictures. But I'm gonna go ahead and keep it as it is for now, since I was really happy with how it turned out. And I'm trying to use my singles, all of them, all the magnetic types of shades, 4 times each this year. So this will help me get some use on some of these shades that I haven't done that with, which is great. So like I said, back to the rest of the video. I encourage you to look at your collection, whether it's this palette or another palette. What colors are you drawn to? Do you already have those colors or palettes that are similar? And if there are certain shades that you really don't have and that you really would want to wear, then maybe just get those and not have to bring in a full 20 shade, you know, eyeshadow palette, something like that. So just something to think about, because when I get tired of this color story, I can just take these and put them back in my collection and rearrange them a different way. But if I had that palette, it's just gonna sit in my drawer. So hopefully this was interesting for you. Thank you for watching. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, then maybe you will consider doing that. I don't have a specific goal for this year of subscribers, but you know, the more the merrier, I guess. And if you like this video, then please give it a thumbs up as well. Until my next video, I hope that you'll be doing well, and I will see you then. Bye.